So you'll notice that your productivity, your performance, those are going down. And you will start to feel tired, groggy, the brain fog, you can't concentrate. You might notice you're hungry. You can also be irritable. Those are basically the signs that you need to stop. It's not enough to just be an architect, a creative professional. The real question is, what are you doing? How are you making an impact if you don't know how to answer that question, or you feel too overwhelmed, stressed out, or burned out to even think about it? I'll help you get beyond the status quo trap in our profession to get inspired again. If you're ready, let's get architecting. Hey, Bright Lights, welcome back to Architecting. You know that I always come up with the content for this show based on experiences that I'm having or experiences that all of you share with me. I just spent the last weekend in Denver at the American College of Healthcare Architects / Academy of Architecture for Health Summer Leadership Summit. Love this conference. It is deliberately very small, only about 200 people. All healthcare architects, and it is a small world as healthcare architects. We've all worked together at one time or another, or been involved in either or both of the two organizations, or collaborated on projects. So it's a small community, and it's always fun to reconnect. That's almost more fun than the really great sessions that we have. But what I wanted to focus on is I had a lot going on over the last few days. The conference started in the morning on Friday of last week, and normally I would have made the trip out to Denver from Cincinnati on Thursday. However, in Cincinnati, we have this great leadership program for architects called Vision. My colleague Madeline organizes it, and we have different speakers come in to talk to the chapter and give a lecture on whatever the leadership topic is, and then the following day they work with the Vision class. Well, it just so happened that the person who was coming in to speak on Thursday night was Graciela Carrillo, who is a really dynamic leader at the national level. She's been on the Strategic Council of AIA for many years, and this year she is also on the national board. She also founded the Immigrant Architects Coalition and is just this amazing dynamic force of nature. I did an interview with Graciela, which you can listen to and learn all about her, but I had gotten her to come in because the topic for last week was advocacy. And I didn't want to miss that session because Madeline wanted me there. I wanted to see Graciela. We had a great dinner afterward. But it meant that I had to catch a 6:15, you heard that right, flight out of Cincinnati the next morning, which means I had to get up super early in order to get to the airport. Also, Denver is on mountain time. There are a lot of evening events, so getting back, it's much later for me, who hasn't yet adjusted fully to the time zone. And then on Saturday, we start right at 8 in the morning, another long day. On Sunday, I took the optional tour. I'm glad I did. It was a great experience. However, that meant that I had to catch a 4:30 p.m. flight out of Denver, and then our connecting flight going into Cincinnati was delayed. In addition to that, a bunch of other flights were delayed. So not only did we get in after midnight, but there was this huge line for the park and ride to get back to my car. Walked into my house at 2 a.m. on Monday morning, totally exhausted. The trip, 100% worth it. However, I had to make some trade-offs in order to juggle doing the things I wanted to do that were very depleting. I know you know what this is like. We have to make these kinds of decisions all the time. And sometimes the better decision comes at the cost of sleep and rest. But it doesn't mean you can just shortchange yourself on that front and ignore it. I mean, I was really fuzzy headed all day Monday. I worked from home, and actually I only worked a half a day because I was pretty useless. And I made sure I got a really good night's sleep on Monday, and I'm feeling much better, much more restored now. But I also know it's going to take me 3 or 4 days to fully recover from this. That made me realize we need to talk about our biorhythms and natural cycles a whole lot more. It is not lost on me that when I drew the cards for my Space Doctor series yesterday, that the 2 cards that came up were resiliency and temporal cues. I had to laugh because the theme of the conference that I'd been at was resiliency, but I think we can also think about our own personal physical resiliency. And also temporal cues. Part of that is respecting our biorhythms. And for those of you that don't know, the Space Doctor series is on my YouTube channel. It's based on my research into salutogenesis. So the deck has 2 parts. Foundational concepts, which are basically things that can either contribute to health or illness. And then the other part of the deck is based on what my research has identified are 5 core theories that make up salutogenesis. And there's a bunch of cards that are all different sub-theories that are there. Every single week, I draw a card from each part of the deck, and then my challenge, just for fun, is to think about how those 2 cards pair together. So it's a great way for me to challenge myself and expand my thinking about salutogenesis. These are short videos, and the idea is to make this research easy for anyone to understand, and more importantly, to put into practice in your home or on your projects. I have a lot of fun doing this, but it is also completely up to chance what cards I'm going to draw. I think it's really interesting what comes up because I think it's what we need to know, what we're meant to hear. If you're interested, you can head over to the Architecting YouTube channel, and if you look at playlists, you'll see Space Doctor, and you can take a listen to all of those. I wanted to share what I was talking about specifically around temporal cues, because you probably heard of circadian rhythms, and that's where this part of our brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus receives light information from photoreceptors that are in our eyes and in our skin as well. That information, and it is brightness as well as color temperature, lets it know how to release hormones. So this is part of our sleep-wake cycle. It regulates even things like our appetite or our body temperature. That's why people who work the night shift can be out of whack if you're not spending enough time in natural light or environments with the right color temperature. Throw your circadian cycle off. But the circadian cycle is not all of it. There's also something called the Ultradian cycle, and these are cycles that are not a daily thing. So it could be seasonal allergies you have, it could be your monthly cycle. Things like that are intradian rhythms. But what I want to talk about today is something called ultradian rhythms. These are biological patterns within our DNA that regulate how our body functions in time, and they oscillate. So each ultradian cycle takes about 90 minutes. And what happens during that cycle is that energy production, output, and recovery keep going in cycles. So you start with producing energy, then you expend the energy, then you need a recovery period. Throughout the day, you have multiple ultradian rhythms, and you can think of them as performance peaks. As you get into a flow of activity and mental focus, you're using up oxygen, glucose, other energy. You build to a peak, which is when you are most productive, high performing. However, in order to get there, these things that are getting burned up also lead to waste products. So you start to have metabolic waste in your brain. You have what's called data snippets, fragmented thoughts in your brain that build up, also just cellular debris in your system. As this begins to build up, you start to come down from that peak and experience a version of the stress response. So you'll notice that your productivity, your performance, those are going down. And you will start to feel tired, groggy, the brain fog, you can't concentrate. You might notice you're hungry. You can also be irritable. Those are basically the signs that you need to stop and rest. But what do most of us do? We do not stop. We do not rest. We tell ourselves we need to push through. We eat a sugary snack or a high carb snack. We guzzle some coffee. We keep going. The reason I'm sharing this is because I want to raise a red flag on that tendency to keep going and explain to you why you will get more done faster and better if you stop instead. When you start to feel that way, your body has hit the bottom of an Ultradian cycle and it needs to restore. Just 20 minutes will allow that reset to happen, and your body can detox and do some minor repairs in that 20 minutes. It regulates your cells, your blood sugar, your hormones, and all your neurotransmitters. That means that you're now ready to ramp up to another peak. If you don't do this, you are really setting yourself up for failure. And here is why. According to research by Pilar Gerasimo in her book, The Healthy Deviant, when you ignore that recovery time, as you move up, the next peak will not be as high as the one before it. So you can imagine if you go throughout the day, you have multiple Ultradian cycles. If we imagine like a ball bouncing, right? The first time it bounces off the floor, it bounces up really high. It hits the floor again, and the next time it doesn't bounce up quite as high, and so on until it stops bouncing. And that's basically what you're doing to your energy when you don't pay attention to this. Not only is your performance and your productivity going down throughout the day, but this is going to have a long-term impact on your health because inflammation is going to get higher. Inflammation, we know, is the root of all disease. Your blood pressure is going to get higher. Blood sugar and insulin response get out of whack. Your cholesterol can go up. Your immunity goes down. Your neurotransmitters are imbalanced. Your mental capacity goes down. Your memory starts to fail you. Your digestion doesn't work as well. Metabolism slows down. You're more moody and reactive. Your communication and relational skills, they go away. They start to be diminished. The things we most need, our observational capacity, even our motor skills. That's why they say that being sleep deprived is worse for you than being drunk. That's all tied to this. Why am I telling you this? Because you have activated a stress response that is physiological. We talk a lot about overwhelm, stress, and burnout here in the architecting community. And a lot of times we imagine the stress is based on experiences we're having, external factors. But this is an internal factor. It is stress that you are creating by not treating your body well. You've already got the external factors of stress weighing on you. Now you are adding to that stress burden by ignoring your biological rhythms, basically throwing gasoline on the stress fire. You're exacerbating everything. Just like I always mention when we talk about external things that contribute to a stress response, I told you all these symptoms, right? All these things that happen. These are the things that, one, take away your physical health, but they also rob you of your creativity and resourcefulness and ability to be patient and work with others and compassionate and empathetic. The very things you need to best navigate the external stressors in your life are being taken away by the stress response. Let's please stop this. You need to make sure that the moment you start to lose focus, feel a little fatigued, that you stop, that you take 20 minutes to do something else. Maybe you need to walk around a little bit. Maybe you need to shift your energy and work on some correspondence, catching up with people, reaching out to people in your network. Maybe it would help if you work on a presentation or something graphic so that you're using a different part of your brain. There's nothing wrong with taking a quick break. I realize we can't utterly stop work for 20 minutes every 90 minutes during a day. That may not be possible or realistic. But remember that rest and taking a break doesn't always need to look like zoning out and having quiet time. It could look like things that are creatively stimulating. So maybe you are watching a YouTube video that is about the history of a building type, or the biography of an architect whose style is similar to something you're looking at pursuing in the project you're working on, or learning something about climate change or resilience, something where you are shifting to a more passive mode. You're learning something that's interesting, but that's not requiring you to be doing and pushing and expending energy. That can be a rest, but it's a rest that still had relevance. These 20-minute breaks can coincide with when you eat lunch or take a coffee break. They can also coincide with maybe when you just check in with people on your team. It's not a formal meeting. It's not about getting things done. It's about saying, how are you doing? Where are you struggling? That kind of stuff can allow the other person to rest as well, to take a break, to reset, and lets you be a better leader who's more in tune with what's going on, what your team needs, helps you better to serve them. So there's lots of different ways that we can think about doing this. Hustle culture does not serve us. We need to recognize that we have biological rhythms, and by working with them instead of fighting against them, we actually are setting ourselves up for success. If you want to learn more about resiliency and about temporal cues in design, make sure you head on over to my YouTube channel and check out that episode that is part of the Space Doctor playlist. And as always, let me know what you think. It was so much fun at the conference having people who are listeners come up and talk to me about episodes they enjoy and sharing the podcast with others, or having people like Molly Scanlon, who I interviewed on the podcast, be one of the speakers, and being able to point people back to her episode if they wanted to learn more about Molly and her work. You know I love hearing from you, and don't forget to rate and review if you are enjoying this podcast. It really is the best way to support the podcast and help more people to find it. Make sure you tell someone you think needs this information. That is how we all elevate ourselves, is when we also help others and we really start to talk about these things that no one wants to talk about but aren't going to change unless we do. All right, everyone, take care, and I will see you next time.
Thanks
Thanks for listening. If you want even more content, head on over to architectingpodcast.com and subscribe to my newsletter and get some great free downloads while you're there. Be sure to follow me on social media. On Instagram at Architecting Podcast, Facebook and LinkedIn pages are Architecting, and the YouTube channel Architecting Podcast. Stay inspired.